Hello, everyone. Wyatt Claypool here. Tomorrow, I'm going to be heading out to Red Deer to attend the United Conservative Party of Alberta's annual general meeting. I'm doing this as a member, not as a media person, although I also always apply for the media pass because I enjoy having both. And while I'm there, like everyone else, I'll be voting on policy. I will be electing new members of the executive board, but I will also be voting in the leadership review of UCP leader and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. And I wanted this video to basically be my report card on Danielle Smith. I know a lot of people are going to be upset with me because people have the idea that Danielle Smith is like the pillar of conservatism in Canada. And I think that's really just because Alberta's a fantastic province and Alberta makes premiers look good. Even Rachel Notley probably would have seemed like one of the more fiscally conservative premiers when she was the premier of Alberta between 2015 and 2019. And it's just because the oil and gas industry is great. We have a great service industry. We have a great mining sector. So even the NDP can't quite screw that up. Yeah, they ran some deficits, but compared to even Doug Ford in Ontario right now and other premiers around the country, even Rachel Notley looked pretty good. And so Danielle Smith has a lot of shine on her because she's the premier of Alberta. If you made Justin Trudeau the premier of Alberta, he would look suddenly more fiscally responsible than he really is, just because there's way more money to play with because of oil and gas royalties. But what I want to get down to is an actual relative evaluation of how Danielle Smith has been doing based on how easy it, in a certain sense, should be to be the premier of Alberta. Again, government revenues are very easy to raise in Alberta because of oil and gas revenues. We don't actually need to have very high taxes in order to have a big budget. We have pretty low taxes compared to the rest of the country. But even then, there's just been a lot of things that have been fumbled, have just not been done that Danielle Smith promised either in her 22 leadership race or in the 2023 provincial election campaign. And I'm just going to start off with this basic one. Where was the income tax cut? We're supposed to have an income tax cut. It keeps getting promised, but every few months that go by, we have more economic news come out showing that the barrel of oil is falling in price and that we have to triple our infrastructure spending to increase the amount of schools because for some reason Danielle Smith was asking Trudeau to import even more immigrants into Alberta before she backed off of it and said, actually, this is all Justin Trudeau's fault, even though I was asking for more people and I was wanting to get us to be the next province to 10 million residents. That's all nonsense, but it was crazy that that even occurred. But every single time we get into the range where we could cut taxes, whether that be the industrial carbon tax, which I think is basically just effectively another version of the consumer carbon tax. There is no such thing as a tax that everybody doesn't pay, at least in part, and the industrial carbon tax still gets added on to your into the prices at the pump. And so I'd like either that lowered, the gas tax lowered because we've brought back the gas tax in full force, or income taxes lowered back to maybe the flat tax that we used to have. I know the flat tax used to be 10%, and currently some people in Alberta only pay 8%, or they're planning on only making people all below $50,000 pay 8%. That's fine, but at least have a plateau that once you start making more than $75,000, you only pay 10. I believe our upper income bracket is currently paying about 15, 16%. And when you actually add that up onto federal taxes, your taxes are still very high off your upper income brackets. And some people can say, well, that's just rich people. So who cares about rich people? That's the economy though. That is what allows people to create jobs, allows people to pay people more, allows prices to go down. So I would really like to see movement on that. And everything I've seen over time just indicates to me that Danielle Smith's not going to lower taxes. There's just no way she's going to. She could have done it before. She didn't do it before the election. She hasn't done it after the election. And part of why she hasn't done it is because wasteful spending is out of control. Our budget is way higher than it used to be when Jason Kenney was the premier. And Jason Kenney raised spending during COVID because of people staying home from work and injecting a bunch of money into the economy. Mostly that was done by the federal government. But Jason Kenney still rapidly increased the budget with the excuse of COVID. I don't think it was a particularly amazing excuse, but whatever, that happened. But we're out of COVID, and Danielle Smith has raised spending more. And it's not like our lives have gotten proportionally better for the spending that has increased. It hasn't. And in fact, we're spending on even more nonsense than ever. I'm just going to quickly cover the two new trains that are either going to go to Banff or going from Calgary to Red Deer to Edmonton. They're not happening. They're just not happening. And do you know what those types of projects end up causing? Just like the Green Line that Danielle Smith rightfully doesn't like, the Green Line's nonsense. It's just a bloated boondoggle of a project. These boondoggle projects allow you to pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to people to do polls on the project, allows people to survey it, do think tanks, do focus groups, surveying the land, and nothing ever gets done, but people are being paid tens of millions of dollars to do nothing. And I don't think anyone is seriously actually trying to get these projects underway, but you could pay your favorite consultants in order to just keep twiddling their thumbs and sharpening pencils rather than doing real work because, oh, we got a train line to plan. Oh my goodness. But we have stuff like anti-racism grant programs. That is an actual thing that we are dumping money into, taking action against racism, the racism anti-grant program. And I know that Minister Mohammed Yassin has tried to justify this by saying, actually, it was just one program that we split into two. So now there's this one diversity and anti racism program has become a diversity and multiculturalism program and an anti racism grant program. And what drives me up the wall is when people then counter and say, well, it's only $7 million going into the anti racism grant program. How many police officers can we hire for that? How many nurses could we hire for that? How much could we just increase the wage of nurses by just putting that into their salary pool? How we could get rid of both of these programs because both these programs are DEI nonsense, but for some reason we still just do it. We even have on the website, and these are being updated as time goes on, our diversity and inclusion policy, promoting a diverse and inclusive Alberta public service. All this needs to go. This you can't just say, "Well, I've managed the government more efficiently than the NDP have." That's not a good argument. And right now, the Alberta UCP's perspective and attack line on Nenshi is stupid. I think Nenshi is a terrible potential premier. He was a horrible mayor of Calgary. Calling him a tax and spend liberal is not going to be enough. That doesn't actually scare people. What you have to do, especially when you're a tax and spend conservative, you cannot keep taxes high and keep ramping up spending off the back of good oil and gas revenues, and then just say that, well, but this Nenshi guy, he's going to spend even more than us. Well, we look like hypocrites then. Let's stop being hypocritical. Can we? That would be great. We have a lot of ESG and environmental spending. Real savings, real change. The Municipal Climate Change Action Center, and this is an Alberta run organization. We have a lot of spending like this. I'm trying to find this stuff. Why did we phase out oil and gas? Danielle Smith became the premier before the oil and gas, the coal phase out happened. And when you're being congratulated by the Pembina Institute, which is an anti-oil and gas front group, you're doing it wrong. We should have brought back coal. We should have just said, nope, we're no longer banning it because we need it to survive. When it's super cold outside and it's negative 40 with the wind chill and we almost have our grid fail, yes, it's good that we're getting rid of unreliable green energy tech. It's not an industry. I hate when people say, oh, it's a great industry, the green energy industry. It's not an industry if you have to pay massive subsidies for it to exist. But that's another thing. Why is Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz adding massive subsidy programs for small businesses if they include green tech? Stop giving handouts based on things that people don't need. Small businesses need a tax cut. Small businesses need a regulatory cut. Our industries need a regulatory cut, need a tax cut. Why are we fooling around by doing this Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau nonsense where we just give out targeted subsidies to areas that we're maybe trying to win votes from? It's obnoxious to me. But here's that thing on the emissions goal stuff on the overview part of the government's website. In 2015, the government of Alberta announced the elimination of emissions from coal power generation by 2030. That was obviously by the Alberta NDP and Rachel Notley. Alberta is rapidly reducing emissions and targeting a carbon neutral grid by 2050. Electricity emissions have declined by 53% since 2005, and the province will have phased out all coal generation by 2024. Notice there that it shows that our emissions were already going down before any of these regulations were in place. The fantastic thing about capitalism and why I'm a capitalist is capitalism incentivizes you to do the best thing for yourself, but that often is actually the best thing for society and in the environment too. Notice how trucks had actually reduced their emission output since the 1970s till now. The definition of what a gas guzzler is way different than it used to be. Because guess what? People are greedy in a good way, and they want their tank of gas to take their truck as far as humanly possible. So our actual fuel efficiency has gone through the roof. Same thing in the oil and gas industry. Same thing in the coal industry, the mining industry. High emissions represent inefficient use of energy. And so, if you actually just cut taxes, a lot of these oil and gas companies will make themselves more efficient because it saves them money. But yeah, oh my goodness, all this stuff is just so annoying to me. Here's another one: the Emissions Reductions Alberta, another Alberta-based corporation by the government. The ERA has two funding streams to help Alberta prosper while reducing emissions. We fund innovative technology projects as well as infrastructure upgrades for our businesses. Learn more about the streams that suits your project below. And it's just grants to select companies to do a bunch of green energy upgrades or whatever that don't go apply to everybody, that taxpayers get to pay for, and the companies could have done it themselves if you just lowered their taxes. I hate stuff like this. And all this is in line with Alberta still pursuing ESG goals. Sorry, I just need to drink a coffee for a second here. And you're probably thinking, why you're hyper enough. No, I'm not. This is actually all in line with ESG goals. And I'm not just saying that because it's a buzzword to say, oh, Alberta's using ESG or we're caring about ESG too much. And then I'm not trying to make them like a WEF comparison. Oh, Danielle Smith is in with Klaus Schwab in the WEF. I don't really care about stuff like that. I just care if the policy is good or bad. And Alberta, and this was updated in 2023. I can show you right here, Alberta's ESG approach. It was updated April 6th, 2023, when Danielle Smith was around. This should have just been archived as soon as she came in, and they should have just gotten rid of all the ESG stuff. Just get rid of it. It's not real economics. It is leftism in disguise as being like trying to make Alberta a better investment destination. Stop playing the ESG game. It's dying anyways. Even BlackRock is moving away from ESG, and they were the biggest promoters of it because I guess they're big social activists. And the truth is, with a lot of ESG stuff, is it's being pushed by, frankly, insecure, insecure wealthy people who are trying to make themselves seem like very good people because they've already made their money, and so they don't actually care if they're going to hammer everyone else down because I'm an activist now, and now Greta Thunberg is going to give me an award or whatever. Anyways, but here's the actual website for Alberta's ESG report. This was, again, updated in 2023, and it's concerning because it contradicts a lot of what Danielle Smith's been saying, especially on mass immigration and her new attack on Justin Trudeau for being the one responsible for mass immigration. Is the federal government responsible for immigration? Yes. But Danielle Smith, for an entire year, was demanding more immigration at the time when Canada had the biggest spike in immigration ever, 1.3 million people. There's a reason why Alberta brought around 250,000 into the province in that year alone. It's because Danielle Smith was actively saying, we want more people, and we are trying to get to 10 million by 2050. So let's just go down here. What is ESG? Environmental and social governance (ESG) criteria are a non-financial performance measure that helps stakeholders, and stakeholders is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. It means that people who have no actual stake, but they just, I live in Alberta, ergo I'm a stakeholder. Help stakeholders understand how an organization is managing risks and opportunities related to environmental, social, and governance issues. They can influence the decision of investors, financial institutions, and talent on where they direct their resources. It doesn't. It actually doesn't. This is a classic go woke, go broke scenario. ESG is actually meant to kind of prop up woke companies that are not profitable, but telling investors, why don't you give money to them? Because they have these very good non-financial metrics going for them. If it's a non-financial metric, in my mind, it's useless. And that's why ESG is so awful. So Alberta's ESG approach, judicial ESG framework. The government of Alberta established an ESG secretariat in May of 2021, the first of its kind by any province, to serve as a strategic coordinating body for all ESG-related activities across government. I just want to get to the progress part because this is really weird to me. Here's social. 23% of Albertans are immigrants or permanent residents, up to 2% from 2016. That's really weird. Why is that a metric of success that we are more immigrants now? And this was done halfway through the year of record-breaking immigration. I guarantee that's more like 4 or 5% at this point. I don't care where people came from. But the problem with ESG is it basically makes you value metrics that don't matter, metrics that don't actually make your province or economy stronger. And this is something that the Alberta government made under Danielle Smith. This needs to be fixed. And the thing is, I have an on ramp for liking Danielle Smith, but right now, and like to just cut to it, in a leadership review, I can't vote for Danielle Smith because a leadership review is me saying, do I like what's happening and do I have confidence in you moving forward? Or do I think there are serious problems and I don't have confidence you're going to do the right thing in the future? That doesn't mean you're not better than Nenshi. If we're basing that off of how we vote for people, we're going to lose in the long run. By the way, the polling's actually not very good in Alberta. Yes, we have polls putting us up 5%, 6%, 7% on the NDP. We won by 8.6% in 2023, and we barely won on seats in Calgary by 1,200 votes. So let's not pretend that we're way ahead, especially because a lot of people in polls between elections just say, yeah, I totally voted for the current incumbent government. It's kind of like a response bias that people who like the current government or maybe even didn't vote, they just said, oh, yeah, I'm voting for the UCP. But as we get closer to an election, it's going to start receding a little bit. Anyways, like even Jason Kenney had really good ratings for the first while of his government. But let's read some more of these. Environmental, first in North America to put a price on industrial carbon. Why are we celebrating that? Why are we celebrating an attack on our institutions? 95% of our oil sands production on path to net zero by 2050. Stop using this as a metric. On track to eliminate coal generation electricity by the end of 2023. So the Alberta government, under Danielle Smith, endorsed that it was going to keep eliminating coal. Why? Because of ESG nonsense? I hope not. I hope it was just that they forgot that we were for some reason eliminating coal for no reason, and then they just let it go, like let it phase out. We shouldn't be doing this. It's foolish. We shouldn't be doing any of this. Again, our budget has been going up under Danielle Smith. We have not cut wasteful HR. We have not cut ESG. We have not cut DEI. We have not moved money in a substantial enough way yet from AHS management and administration, which is super bloated, to the front lines. I actually will give a compliment to Health Minister Adrienne Lagrange. She did a good job so far as health minister, and she was doing a good job as environment minister. There are fantastic MLAs right now in the Alberta caucus and government. There's tons of people I think are great conservatives in that government. But I hope that they are not being hamstrung in how effective they could be because there's just different priorities at the top in the premier's office. There are people in the premier's office I know who are just not conservatives at all. There's tons of non-conservatives on Danielle Smith's 22 leadership campaign. There were people who were BC NDP organizers on her 22 provincial election campaign. One guy was literally, even though he says I converted to being a conservative the year before, like a couple months before the leadership election started, he was doing organizing work for a BC NDP Vancouver Island MLA. Nuts. And I'm not saying that, oh, she hung out with this person, ergo she's bad. I never like when stuff turns into that. But I can't be swayed over the Alberta Bill of Rights. It's still weaker than the Charter. And as some people have pointed out, it actually is worse than the previous Alberta Bill of Rights because it actually starts explicitly laying out where the government can violate your rights. And it wouldn't have changed anything at all during COVID. And a lot of people like Danielle Smith because she's not Jason Kenney. Jason Kenney, I will tell you, had the medal when he got into office, and it wasn't enough for me yet, but it was at least something where I approved of what he was doing. He actually started trying to cut wasteful spending when he got in 2019. COVID kind of sidetracked that, and he did not perform well during COVID, which was why I was ripping him during it. I actually was one of the couple of people, me and David Dixon, who helped get the AHS CEO, Dr. Verna Yu, fired for mishandling ICU beds and using the justification that, oh, our ICUs are being overwhelmed in order to then implement harsher lockdowns and keep people locked down at home and all the stupid social distancing rules. So I'm not somebody sitting here and saying, I'm just here to criticize from the sidelines. I've done stuff in the foreground. I have helped get stuff done myself. And I'm not that convinced that Danielle Smith, if she was the premier during COVID, would have been that much different than Jason Kenney. But everyone gets the plausible deniability that if they weren't in office, that I would have been 10,000 times better. Kenney cut spending. Kenney actually started forcing the universities to actually get their spending under control. Danielle Smith hasn't. And so on many of these fronts, I'm just not very convinced that she's been doing a great job. No, like again, wasteful spending cuts. I guess the taxes haven't been lowered. There's just bloat in administration. We haven't really started fixing AHS enough at all yet. A lot of other issues. There's just way too many patronage appointments in the UCP government. People getting contracts to do nothing. People getting contracts to survey ideas that will never come to fruition. We heavily overspent on the arena deal in Alberta, and yeah, well, that was an election tactic. Everyone knew it was. But like again, over and over again, there's just not very good things being done. We just need some more principle here. And again, I'm voting no. Probably she'll survive, but you have to vote no if you're not impressed right now, because that's the best indicator that she has to pick it up. If you say yes, if you vote yes at the Alberta AGM, you are saying keep being disappointing. And I think so far it has been disappointing. I don't care about the fights with Justin Trudeau and Stephen Guilbeault of her saying you guys should cut the carbon tax on the federal level, then cut the industrial carbon tax yourself, then cut your own taxes. It makes us look like hypocrites when we're going after Stephen Guilbeault, who's a nutcase, when we haven't been doing well enough. This is what I want to see happen: is we get better. Stop invoking Ralph Klein's name if you're not going to be like Ralph Klein. The government's actually very Redford like right now, Alison Redford like, and we put ourselves in a terrible position right now when it comes to spending. Because I'm going to actually have to give Alison Redford a compliment for pointing this out. The problem with relying so much in Alberta on oil and gas revenues, or not being responsible enough around oil and gas royalties that the government collects, is that every time the oil and gas prices go up, the government sees all this extra spending and we fill it with garbage. And then when the oil and gas prices go down, then we create massive deficits. That's actually why the NDP had big deficits. They're very fiscally irresponsible people, and they don't like private property or small business. They literally tried to nationalize all of the basically DMVs in Alberta, but they really only had big deficits because the price of the barrel of oil was very low. We're riding high on high oil and gas prices, and now because we brought way too many people into the province, we're having to triple infrastructure spending by from like 2 billion or 2.6 billion to 8 billion to build more schools, because Danielle Smith frankly was in favor of mass immigration until 5 seconds ago. It would be a lie to say otherwise. She specifically stumped for mass immigration, said let's get like Alberta's to 10 million people and let's get Red Deer to be the next city with a million. And now suddenly, because it became unpopular, she's saying that it was all Justin Trudeau. You were sitting in the jacuzzi with him, in the political jacuzzi with the guy, with a lot of other premiers saying we want more people because it spurs economic growth. And that's very much what the ESG report says, is that we're bringing in more people into the province, ergo the economy is very good and it's more diverse and whatnot. And the Jennifer Johnston situation, I think, actually should be brought up more. Jennifer Johnston, in context, was not actually trying to run down trans kids and make fun of people and compare them to, like, waste or whatever. She was talking about if people are in distress in her class and have mental health issues or have just mental distress issues, that she doesn't consider that good enough just because it's 5% of the class. She was actually describing herself as a socially responsible human being. And then, because Danielle Smith didn't let her sit in the UCP caucus, she then had to go through all these struggle sessions that eventually got leaked, ironically enough, by a leftist who thought it made Jennifer Johnston look bad. She was in a struggle session with a drag queen named Carla Marks, which is a little bit of a tell, demanding that she say that trans women are women, or she's not going to sign off on that she has done proper outreach to the LGBTQ community. Nonsense. And it took a lot of pressure after that was leaked out, showing Jennifer Johnston basically being socially tortured through struggle sessions, for there to be a vote in caucus to bring her back. It didn't sound like, even because Danielle Smith, I believe, actually can just automatically bring people back. It had to be a vote in caucus to bring Jennifer Johnston back. She should have been never kicked out. We shouldn't be executing our own people based off of the dishonest framing of issues that the leftist media does. So yeah, I'm voting against Danielle Smith in it. I hope she does better. And if she starts doing better, I will praise her to the stars. The parental rights stuff looks pretty good. I'm super skeptical that it's being only tabled after the AGM. That lets you water it down past the point where people could have voted you out. And there's other things that are good. I like that they start cracking down on new green energy contracts. I think they should have just ripped up the old ones, because right now, oil and gas costs, let's say on the grid per kilowatt hour, about 7 cents a kilowatt hour, maybe 8 cents if the barrel of oil is a bit higher in price, 8 or 9 cents. Do you know how much green energy costs per kilowatt hour on the grid? It's like 43 cents. And that's why we had our power bills spiking in Alberta, because we phased out coal power, which was very cheap, and we replaced it with green energy power, which if you just stuck basically a pinwheel in the ground and hooked up a cord to the power grid, you were making massive amounts of money, and taxpayers had to subsidize your very inefficient power. So I'm very happy to see, I believe it was Matt Jones and Chantal DeYoung, who are the MLAs who pursued like basically ending new contracts. I hope we can like end the previous ones as well. But that was good. But I would like to see more. And right now, I'm actually doing this because I don't want Nenshi to become the premier of this province. He's awful. He is the most snooty, condescending liberal I've ever seen in my life. Actually, that's a good attack line that they should say he is sanctimonious and high-handed. He thinks he's the smartest person in the room at all times, even with a record of failure. He is somebody he thinks he knows better than you without having ever worked a real job. That's how you go after a man like Naheed Nenshi. And I don't want him to become premier, and that means we need better results. Ralph Klein was unbeatable at the ballot box, despite all the media attacks on him, despite all the smears, despite all the scandals, even because everyone looked at him. They're like, man, that guy did what he said. He lowered taxes. He cut wasteful spending. He made the province better. Not that he made the government slightly more efficient and still increase spending. If the barrel of oil falls, we will be in massive deficit territory. It will be horrible what's going to happen in Alberta if the price of oil and gas falls. If we have a big surplus because of oil and gas, or a barrel like the price of the barrel of oil being high, you know what we should do with that? Pay down the debt, invest in a investment fund, the Heritage Fund for Alberta, and we should even cut wasteful spending still, and then transfer part of that money back to taxpayers in tax cuts, as well as moving it to incentivize people to work in like frontline nursing or to be police officers. I actually don't mind increasing pay for those who actually do good work. But in AHS right now, I think the statistic I saw, or the figure I saw, was like 350 people are managers of nobody underneath them. They don't answer to anyone above them or below them. But I'm the manager of mental health for Southern Alberta. I'm the manager of efficiency or whatever. And they get paid manager salaries for not doing any work. This is stuff where, yes, are you going to have a bad headline if you start cutting this stuff? Because, of course, the media is going to attack you for cutting anything. You should still do it. I hear this excuse all the time inside political parties. Well, if we do that, we're going to get attacked. Do you know what I heard in the 23 election? The UCP's campaign wouldn't go after all of the openly communist candidates the Alberta NDP were running. And when I say that, it's not a smear. These people are posting things about how they think that property rights are cute, and that we have like it was some comment about like property rights being overrated. People posting pictures of Mao on their Facebook timelines, all this stuff. People who were just openly saying that they like the ideas of communism. The campaign said we didn't want to attack them because they might attack our candidates. Stop being losers. Stop having this loser mentality that if you fight hard and you push for a win, that's bad. Be bold. Do something audacious. That's what I'm asking for here. So don't do symbolic policies like the Bill of Rights, which is not really much of anything, and other sort of commitments on COVID and COVID reports on like the lockdowns and whatnot. Who cares? Doesn't actually make anyone's lives better. Let's be just responsible governors. Honestly, Bill of Rights and the Charter don't matter, from the sense that without better people in government to enforce them, to basically respect people's rights, it's never going to get better. That's what we really just need. Better people in government from all levels in all parties. Okay, this is a very long rant. I hope you guys got something out of it. This is just a brief overview of stuff that I've seen. There's a lot more problems I've had with a lot of different spending programs, a lot of different taxes that have even gone up or not been removed. Other people can add in their thoughts. You can openly disagree with me, obviously, but I've just been kind of frustrated with the lack of progress. It's a lot of style and little substance. And people are like, but she went on stage with Tucker. I don't care. Who cares? I actually don't even really like Tucker Carlson that much. That's for very long, complicated reasons. I think that he's very left on certain economic issues. That's quite annoying to me. And then when people are like, oh, that guy's a conservative hero, like, not really, actually, on a bunch of issues. But I encourage you guys all to, especially if you agree with me and you want ever my recommendations in other leadership matters in either Alberta, other provinces, nominations, whatnot, sign up on my website, wyattclaypool.com, and I will basically give you recommendations for good nomination candidates, provincially and federally in different ridings, leadership candidates. There's going to be leadership races in Manitoba and New Brunswick probably coming up soon, as well as just which parties I think are good and bad. I'll always tell you I would never vote for, Doug Ford's PC party in Ontario right now. It's far too liberal, so I'd be voting New Blue Party in that province. I'm not a fringe party guy where if I see a platform and this is better than what whoever else's platform, then I vote for them. You also have to have a point to running. So in Saskatchewan, I would have never voted for the Saskatchewan United Party. The Saskatchewan Party has a lot of problems, but there was nothing, no alternative. There was nothing that would make me think, okay, now United's earned my vote. Saskatchewan Party even has massive corruption issues. It wasn't worth giving the government over to the NDP at the time. You can't just make up a good sounding platform on a website and then run and expect people to vote for you with no work done. New Blue Party works hard, and Doug Ford especially is just no different than the Ontario Liberals at the moment. Way too high spending, subsidies everywhere, very socially liberal, not helping parental rights at all. A lot of terrible stuff there. Jamil Javani, the MP for Durham who replaced O'Toole, won my undying respect by as soon as he won his by-election in Durham, stood up and said Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce are complete hacks on the education issue. They have not done anything that they promised back in 2018 to get the just over the top sex ed curriculum out of schools, to enforce parental rights, to get SOGI 123 type policies out of the schools. That was a very good. I think Jamil Javani is very much a dog with a bone on the issues he cares about, and I hope more politicians are like that in the future. Anyways, so that's it for me today, guys. If you want to support the show, you can donate to the Give, Send, Go campaign for the legal fund in the description below, or as well in the comments at the pinned to the top. That's also where my website link's going to be, wyattclaypool.com, pinned at the top of the comments. See you guys later.